So, when I ask, what is Odoo? What comes to mind? Well, Odoo is a bit of everything. Odoo is a suite of business management software that some people say is like fertilizer because of the way it promotes growth. But some people also say Odoo is like a magic beanstalk because it grows with your company and is also magically affordable. But then again, you could look at Odoo in terms of how its individual software programs are a lot like building blocks. I mean, whatever your business needs, manufacturing, accounting, HR programs, you can build a custom software suite that's perfect for your company. So what is Odoo? Well, I guess Odoo is a bit of everything. Odoo is a fertilizer, magic beanstalk building blocks for business. Yeah, that's it. Which means that Odoo is exactly what every business needs. Learn more and sign up now at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
I'm Courtney Smith.
And I'm Elyse Sharp.
And we are two nerds who are here to make Shakespeare easier to understand.
In this podcast, we will explore as many dimensions to Shakespeare's plays as we can by looking at the text, examining the historical context in which the plays were written, and how these plays are viewed through modern lenses of feminism, racism, classism, colonialism, nationalism, ableism, all of the isms.
We will discuss how his plays shaped both the past and present, and, as theater makers, how his plays can be responsibly performed today, all while trying our best to approach his works without giving in to bardolatry.
So, Shakespeare, anyone?
Hi, listeners. Want to support Shakespeare Anyone? Visit shakespeareanyone.com/support or check out the links in our episode description. Now, onto the episode.
Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Elyse. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. How about you?
I'm also doing well. Today's a bit of a different day. As listeners can see from the title of the episode, today is a mini interview episode. But this format is a little bit different today. So, Elyse, you look a little nervous.
Yeah. As listeners know, I love leading our interview episodes, but we're turning the tables a little bit on me specifically today.
Yes. Elyse, you are going to join me interviewing you and your colleagues to discuss a Shakespeare-adjacent project that you have been working on for the past few months.
9 months or so, yeah.
Oh, wow. More than just the past few. I can't remember. Time is going by so rapidly.
Okay. You were writing a dissertation. You were finishing 2 master's degrees.
So after 9 months, you are now in the rehearsal stages of putting on this Shakespeare-adjacent production that you co-wrote and probably dramaturged, right?
Yes. Yeah, co-wrote and helped dramaturg. So we are going to be, as you said, talking to myself, my co-playwright, Sean Patrick Nill, and our lead actor, M.L. Roberts, about Never Fear Shakespeare, a new family-friendly comedy about Shakespeare.
Yes. So let's go ahead and let's introduce your team, go through some bios, and then we'll bring you this wonderful conversation. The lead actor for this production is M.L. Roberts. M.L. Roberts is the son of a Navy veteran and descendant of the Gullah Geechee of the Carolinas. As a member of Actors Equity Association, he has performed with Seattle Children's Theatre, Folger Shakespeare, Unicorn Theatre in the UK, the Williams Project, and Santa Cruz Shakespeare, among others. As a playwright, his debut production, Riverside, premiered at Indie Shakes. His work has been developed with New Harmony Project, Space on Writer Farm, and GTG's Speaker's Corner. As a screenwriter, he co-wrote a Lifetime movie and has developed work with Hulu. He is a member of the Dramatists Guild of America, a Broadway Advocacy Coalition Fellow, co-artistic director of Yale Cabaret Season 57, Phoenix, and inaugural core company member at ACT Theater in Seattle. ML has an MFA in playwriting from the Yale School of Drama and a BFA in acting from North Carolina School of the Arts. And you can learn more about ML at his website, which we will link in our episode description.
Sean Patrick Nill is artistic and general manager at the B Street Theater. His B Street writing credits include Tiny Trailblazers, Kids Who Changed the World, Winnie the Pooh, 'Tis the Season, Fantasy Festival 31 through 36, Mind-Boggling Mysteries of the World, and Mathematical Madness. His directing credits at B Street include Tiny Trailblazers, Kids Who Changed the World, Cosmo St. Charles is Dead and Someone in This Room Killed Him, The Prince of Lightning, The Play That Goes Wrong, The Last Wide Open, A Year with Frog and Toad, Proclivity for Kiting, and Fantasy Festival 31 through 36. His plays have been produced by the Sacramento Theater Company, B Street Theater, Children's Museum and Theater of Maine, Rover Drama Works, Theater Inspirato Festival, Watermelon One Act Festival, MT Pockets Theater, Torrent Theater, and the Manhattan Repertory Theater. His play, Kings of America, was a finalist for the Davy Foundation Theater Grant given by the Salt Lake Acting Company. His play, An Ordinary Woman, was published in Stage It, 10-Minute Plays 2017 edition. And his play, Brinley and the Bull, won the Audience Choice Awards at the Inspirato 10-Minute Play Festival in Canada. His adaptation of Winnie the Pooh, which premiered at the B Street Theater, is now published and can be purchased through theatrical rights worldwide. The link is in our episode description.
And you know her as my Shakespeare Anyone co-host. Elyse Sharp is a member of Actors Equity Association and the Shakespeare Association of America, as well as a director, podcaster, dramaturge, and teaching artist. At the age of 9, and inspired by an episode of the PBS series Wishbone, she rewrote Romeo and Juliet for a 4th grade class assignment, and she's been passionate about Shakespeare and helping others understand his work ever since. Previously with B Street Theater, she has been an associate producer of the New Comedies Festival, an actor in Prince of Lightning, Mind-Boggling Mysteries of the World, and Fantasy Festivals 32 and 33, an understudy for Dance Nation and Winnie the Pooh. As an actor, she has performed in 17 of Shakespeare's plays. Her socials and website are linked in the episode description below.
B Street Theater is Sacramento's premier new works theater for both children and adults. Founded in 1986 as Fantasy Theater, a traveling children's theater troupe, B Street has premiered more than 135 plays across its school tour, family series, and main stage series. Located at the Sophia Sokopoulos Center for the Arts in Midtown Sacramento, B Street is California's only year-round professional theater for young audiences. Known for championing bold new voices and creating theater that is both accessible and adventurous, B Street has been named Sacramento Magazine's top Sacramento theater numerous times. In 2025, it was honored with the National Theater Conference's Theater of the Year Award, recognizing its outstanding contributions to American theater. To learn more, visit B Street Theater's website, which we will link in our episode description.
And last, Never Fear Shakespeare follows one shoemaker's son on his journey to become an actor alongside the Lord Chamberlain's men, stepping right into some of Shakespeare's greatest hits. From Romeo and Juliet's balcony to The Witches of Macbeth and the drama of Hamlet, it's Shakespeare reimagined with a wink and a laugh. For fans of Shakespeare in Love and Book of Will, this family-friendly comedy isn't just a history lesson. It's pure theater magic, showing kids and grown-ups that the bard's words are still buzzing with life, laughter, and big imagination. And now, enjoy the episode. Hello, welcome to Shakespeare Anyone, the team of Never Fear Shakespeare. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome, ML. Welcome, Sean. Welcome, Elyse.
Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you.
So
Hello.
excited.
Yeah.
For our listeners, since this is audio, if everyone could just say hi and your name so we know what voice is associated with the name. So we'll start with lead actor.
Hello, my name is ML Roberts.
I am Sean Patrick Nill. I am a co-playwright of Never Fear Shakespeare.
And I am Elyse Sharp, co-playwright of Never Fear Shakespeare.
I'm so excited to talk to the three of you about Never Fear Shakespeare. But first, I'm going to start this out how we start all of our interviews. What was your first experience with Shakespeare?
Yeah, okay. My first experience with Shakespeare was an audition. Actually, I was auditioning. I was in high school and I was auditioning to go to boarding arts high school, and you had to do a Shakespeare monologue. And so I found a book of Shakespeare monologues. I didn't even have the collected works at the time. And I think I did Petruchio's monologue from Taming of the Shrew, the big, right before he meets Kate. And I had no idea what I was saying, but I was really excited about it. And I just I remember I was like, yes, I'm going to stand on a chair in one part of it, and that will really grab their attention. And so that was like I think there was a moment where I was like, yeah, say that she rail. And I like jumped on the chair. And that was like my one big moment in the monologue.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the blocking you added to it. That's very fun.
My first experience with Shakespeare was when I was a kid, certain months I was off track, and my dad was a high school English teacher. So I would have to go because my mom was a nurse and she would sleep during the day. So I would have to go to his school during the daytime so I didn't wake her up because I have flat feet that are very loud. And he would be teaching Romeo and Juliet to the freshmen, and he would be teaching Hamlet to the seniors. And I remember particularly Hamlet, he would make the kids read aloud. And of course, you would have the begrudging, but there were moments where you could see the story come to life, and it was really cool. So that was my introduction to Shakespeare as a little boy in Mark Nill's senior English class.
And then mine was an episode of Wishbone, a PBS show where a talking Jack Russell Terrier imagined himself in great works of literature. And there's a Romeo and Juliet episode that really stuck with me and that I used as inspiration for a class assignment in 4th grade where I had to write a story in a specific genre. And I chose romance because I thought it would be really easy to stand out in the romance genre when I was writing against a bunch of other 9-10-year-olds. No one else would want to write that. So I rewrote it, added some great jokes into it, in my opinion. Like Juliet pulls out the dagger from Romeo's boot and it smells because obviously feet smell. And that's funny at 9 years old. And then the next year I saw my first professional Shakespeare production at Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And as I like to say, it's been all downhill from there. Mm-hmm. It's all led to here.
I love that. And I also love the variety of experiences that all three of you have and how all of your experiences have led you to this one particular production, this Shakespeare-adjacent production, which is very exciting. And so for listeners who aren't familiar with B Street Theater, can you tell us a little bit more about the theater?
So B Street Theater started in 1986 as fantasy theater. Tim Busfield, along with his brother Buck, had a dream. So basically, while Tim was acting in TV shows and movies, he kept this dream alive of wanting to produce professional traveling theater for kids. The theater has always been in the realm of theater for young audiences, and specifically professional theater for young audiences, because while it's always fun to see Little Billy in Music Man when you're a kid, it's way more of an experience when you see professionals telling a story specifically written for kids. So for 40 years now, B Street Theater has been committed to writing original plays geared toward kids and families that are fun, that fully envelop an audience into the story. If we educate them, that's a great plus. But the main thing is we want them to have that first theatrical experience like we all had, where we got sucked into a story and was in that theatrical experience. That's always been B Street's mantra and motto, and that's why we've been really successful with producing professional theater for young audiences.
I also would like to add something, even though this is my first time working with B Street and this is my first week working with B Street, but I would say what I'm excited about and what I've noticed already in this time is that they have a company of artists, writers, directors, actors. And I think that's very relevant when we're talking about Shakespeare, and something that is sadly not, is very rare in the American theater now, is to have a company, but that is the backbone of a lot of theater making, is having a company of artists with which you understand your way of working. You've done multiple shows together and you're creating something together for a very specific community that knows those company of artists. And so that is something that I think used to be very commonplace and, was much inspired by Elizabethan England and Shakespeare's company, which is what our play is about. I think it's really awesome that B Street is that in the modern day.
Thanks, Amal.
Yeah.
For listeners, a fun fact about this podcast is that it wouldn't exist without B Street Theater because Courtney and I met working for B Street Theater.
Yep. Fantasy Festival 33, writer-director Sean Patrick Nill.
Wow.
That's right. That's right. That was the one we had the magic pencil.
Yeah.
That first play had like it was all rhyming couplets. So with Fantasy Festival, and it's gone on since the first year, kids would submit plays and then a professional playwright would take their story and kind of adapt it to be fully fleshed out. So there was a kid who wrote this dueling storyteller one, and one was very Shakespearean and academic, and one was like a rocker kid, something like that. And they told the story of this gardener or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, that was a fun festival. That was a good time. And a lot of what ML's saying, everyone in the B Street Company has gone through Fantasy Festival or our school tour or our family series, which, similar to Shakespeare's time, you have this short window to create something special. And you have to tell a good story. You have to make sure you can do it legitimately and without anyone getting hurt. You have to make sure it's clear and that it's entertaining. It's so fun, and we're blessed to have someone like ML who, first day just came in and was like, I'm here, I know what's going on, and I'm ready to play as well. So it's TYA has been a big part of how we do theater and has also helped us become much better theater artists.
Yeah, you definitely grow as an actor performing for kids who don't have preconceived notions about how theater should be or what is polite or not polite. They will be very honest when they like something or don't like something.
They don't buy a ticket.
They don't.
They just come,
Yeah.
And so basically, yeah, they're not going to lie to you. If they're bored, kids' reactions are the greatest when they're great, and they're the funniest when they're bad. But that's also, as a theater artist, you understand why every moment, every detail gets worked to the bone, because the second a kid is lost, it's so much harder to get them back involved. And so you have to ensure that every single beat flows correctly into the next one, and every single story point is clear and concise, so that way they can follow it and enjoying it. Yeah, it's a science. Yeah. I love it.
You go, ML.
Well, no, I actually just wanted to tee this up for you, Elyse, because maybe you were going to say this, but you said this the first day of rehearsal, and I love that you said that kids are the original groundlings. And I was wondering if you could, talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think it's the closest we can get. And I think you said something similar first day rehearsal to ML. Much like Shakespeare's audiences, where this idea of coming to a building and sitting down and watching something was new. It was a sort of like new invention, and everything was a new work. And everybody was doing, their version of a city comedy or a revenge tragedy. And so you're going to see, Marlowe's version of this or Johnson's version of this. And kids, because they don't have, as Sean was speaking to, and you spoke to, Courtney, the preconceived notion of like what behavior is expected of them, and they don't have the financial stake, they will react honestly, much like Shakespeare's groundlings. They're not going to sit in the codified behavior that people learn in American theater of you sit down in this dark room and you are quiet, don't you dare unwrap a candy or a cough drop, and just give your full attention. If they're distracted, they'll get distracted, much like the groundlings were distracted. They need things repeated. TYA will have very distinct repetition because, like Shakespeare, there's some details that we need to repeat because our core audience is getting distracted, and they'll say things back if they feel like you are asking them to say things back to them. Kids will disengage if they feel like you're being disingenuous, if they feel like somebody is not living truthfully. They are the closest we can get to that sort of experience of this pit of people who are rowdy and who are engaging with the material that's being presented to them in a way that is different than grown-ups going to theater when they've paid for a ticket and feel like it's a formal event. Kids, they've been brought here, whether they want to or not.
It's truly visceral for them, which is awesome because that's an experience we don't always get.
Yeah, what you're saying brings up multiple things for me. One is I've had the experience of doing a lot of outdoor theater, and it's so exciting. It's so fun. And I've done a lot of Shakespeare. And I think there are moments with, people who've performed a lot of Shakespeare that you get deep into a run and you can sometimes get jaded or get a little, you've done the same show many times in a row and you're tired, or you're sort of relying on your technique as opposed to your full talent sometimes. And then there's that moment where you do a student matinee and the students come in and they don't know the show at all and they have no context for Shakespeare, and it becomes a different experience, and it sort of reminds you why you're performing or why we do these plays or how special it is. Just when you start to sort of phone it in a little bit, even though, that it's just a human thing sometimes. And then the students remind you, oh, this is brand new. This is not 400 years old. This is happening right now in this moment.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I was thinking of is this idea of respectability and etiquette and decorum in the theater, and how that is in relation to class, ethnicity, race, culture. I have had that experience where there are, depending on who's in the audience, not just children, that there is a level of either learning or unlearning that has to be done of what is this agreement we have, and what is the level of participation specifically with Shakespeare, because Shakespeare was writing for the groundlings and the king and queen. And so it's always an interesting dance between performer and audience member.
There's a sort of like aliveness to the experience when anybody in the audience who has not seen Shakespeare, who doesn't have the idea of like, this is the greatest writer of all time, and I need to sit down, I need to pay attention to every single word. And if I don't get every single word, it's a bad experience. And then there are people of all ages who are coming in without that, like Shakespeare on a pedestal idea, who are just like, I don't know what this is. And that's what Shakespeare's audience were coming in with. They bring a freshness to these 400-year-old words that we sometimes forget that exists still. I think what's great about TYA specifically is that it's an opportunity to introduce people at a young age to the idea that theater can be for them, that it is something that they can enjoy too. Because often, I think Sean has a really great statistic about it that he's told me about, that there's like an age where people decide that theater is either for them or not for them based on whether or not they've had an experience in it.
TYA America did a study that said children between the ages of 12 and 14, 94% of them decide whether they will be participators in theater just as an audience or not, depending upon if they've seen a play or depending on the quality of play they've seen, which is why especially professional TYA is so important to not only produce, but also to support.
One other thing I was thinking, I also think with these invitations that the onus is also on us as artists and theater makers and the person extending the invitation. I'm an actor and a writer, and something I spend a lot of time thinking about writing for the stage is how you are inviting folks into the space, because I actually didn't see a lot of theater growing up until I got to high school. And the few times I did could have been transformative experiences. But a lot of time, that behavior or whatever expectation there was did not allow for my fullness to exist in the space, And so I think even once we get young children into the theater, there's still a way in which we hold that space for them that allows them to see, oh, this is a thing that you want to return to, not another space where you are policed in some way,
Yeah.
We're scaffolding what TYA is and how Shakespeare and TYA can come together. Has B Street ever done Shakespeare before?
In the early days of Shakespeare, when we were fantasy theater, we did introduction to Shakespeare classics. And these were much like a lot of TYA Shakespeare is, short sketches that tell you what Romeo and Juliet is, Taming of the Shrew, those classics. And then we've also done Equivocation a couple years back when it first premiered in New York. But other than that, we haven't done a lot of Shakespeare. We do a lot of adaptations of classic novels or books. We just did The Hardy Boys. I wrote an adaptation of Winnie the Pooh. We tackle a lot of different subjects throughout science and history and literature, but Shakespeare is one that we haven't touched in a while, and is one of the reasons we wanted to produce Never Fear Shakespeare, because we felt it was time to reintroduce the bard in a B Street way, which is way more human, not the greatest playwright of all time, but a person who worked in theater, who was trying to make a living off of it, and worked with the best company of actors at that time, which was the Lord Chamberlain's Men.
And how is Never Fear Shakespeare different from other Shakespeare for young audiences or Shakespeare-adjacent plays, either the ones that B Street has done in the past or any that exist outside of B Street?
Never Fear Shakespeare is a great introduction to Shakespeare for those individuals who don't know much about Shakespeare, might find Shakespeare to be intimidating or over academic. A lot of TYA Shakespeare does what I mentioned before, which it takes Romeo and Juliet, and it's, the Dodgers versus the Giants, and they do Hamlet, and it's some type of sketch aspect to it that makes it relatable. But Elyse and I specifically wanted to tell this story in a way that introduces you to Shakespeare's work and the people who worked with him on these plays. I'm a firm believer, because I work with a company of some of the best actors and directors in the country, in my personal opinion, that new plays are written with a lot of collaborators. And I can't imagine William Shakespeare being immune to that. When you have Richard Burbage and Will Kemp in the room, they can assist in making these iconic theater moments so memorable. So that's what we wanted to capture. And we also thought it was a great way to introduce kids to Shakespeare, because it's him as a working man who's trying to do this well. We don't worship at the altar of Shakespeare. He's a guy who's doing his best.
Yeah, it parallels the work that we do here on the podcast of the minus the bardolatry, presenting Shakespeare as, a human being who lived during a certain time, who had a job and was very good at that job. And for me, I know that the work that we've done here, and the more that I, as a theater artist, learn about the context, or like learning that, Will Kemp was the originator of Dogberry, and then when he leaves the company, that's why we have two different types of clown in Shakespeare's, because Robert Armin comes in and has his version of what a clown is, and Shakespeare starts writing to that. I think that sort of information helps me so much when I am engaging with Shakespeare as an actor or a director or producer, to crack open these stories even deeper, that I think starting to give that to young audiences as they are maybe encountering Shakespeare for the first time, or are about to, get into studying him in school in a few years, for them to have that added context that plays are made in collaboration, that plays are living texts, they are not the same as novels, is something where like the work of the podcast and the work of this play overlap for me.
I would also say the play does something really exciting in having, with the historical fiction of it, and having my character, Ben Shoe, the shoemaker's son, who is the protagonist and also the proxy for the audience, someone who doesn't know Shakespeare at all, but sees a play and is excited by it and wants to join the company, and is learning iambic pentameter for the first time, is learning how to speak heightened text and poetry for the first time, is learning those plays as they're being made. And so that you're following this person's journey of becoming acclimated to the works of Shakespeare as it's being made, along with, these young people who are coming in to see it as well at the same time. As well as the fact that, Sean and Elyse have this, note at the beginning of the play for the performer: don't do any fancy accents. Don't try to do anything outside of yourself. We want you to bring your full self as performer to this play. And so I think that also will have an effect. You know, if you're looking back at 1598 Elizabethan England, you're going to think a certain thing until you hear our 5 company members, actors, you know, doing whatever we are in the present day. And so that is also a way in which we're inviting these children into the world.
Plus, it's funny.
Yeah, a lot of points of accessibility.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, it's heartfelt, it's a story. Devenshu goes on a journey that you can follow, and that journey happens to be with Shakespeare and the Lord Chamberlain's Men, which is a way in which I love to write, and I know Elyse, we really enjoyed bringing people into this world through one of my favorite names for a character of all time, which is Ben Shu. Just good old Ben Shu. I love him.
Yeah, I looked through a rehearsal draft and was struck by how clever and what a great access point Ben Shu, the shoemaker's son, talking to William Shakespeare, the glovemaker's son, is, and how just it's clever, it's fun, and it's accessible for kids, which is the point of it all. And in your opinion, for all 3 of you, why should young audiences be introduced to Shakespeare?
From my personal experience, being somebody whose journey with Shakespeare started at a young age, and I was introduced to Shakespeare through a piece of media entertainment for young audiences. I've never seen Shakespeare as something to be intimidated by. It was always something that had the potential to entertain me, something that I could understand. The door was always open for me. So I think that showing kids that it's possible to understand Shakespeare is helpful because it helps remove the barrier of this isn't for me, or am I too dumb to understand this? If they encounter it early and it's joyful and fun, then maybe when they are encountering it in the classroom, they can tap back into that early experience and know that they have the ability and the right to engage with this work just as much as anybody else.
Yeah, I would second all of that 100%. And I think what theater asks of all of us, of all ages, in this modern age, is a call to your full imagination and, most importantly, your attention, to sit in a space for 2-3 hours and go somewhere else and let those mirror neurons fire for a while, you know, is an impossible ask these days, you know, but people do it when they see a Shakespeare play. And that what that does to the brain, what that does to your critical thinking skills is so important to be a citizen of the world, I think. And I think the earlier we can begin to train that muscle, the better. And yeah, lowering that bar of access, lowering, like, not feeling like there is a space in the theater that you can't touch from an early age is so important. I also think because these plays are 400 years old and they've been done so many different ways, it's one of the only spaces in the theater where anything is possible. You can do Taming of the Shrew set in the American South in the trailer park. You can have Love's Labor's Lost be in colonial India, you know, and so the representation piece, I think, of expanding the imagination in that way, that, oh, this person who either looks like me or doesn't look like me, who comes from my background or doesn't come from my background, can be a king, can be a servant, can be, you know, like, to see those things at an early age will definitely do something to a child's imagination.
I will third that sentiment, adding on to ML and Elise's point. Shakespeare has, for many reasons, but has been a relevant figure in at least Western history for a while. And there are ways in which kids can access certain linguistic devices such as alliteration, assonance, hyperbole, metaphor. I think right now in today's society, we need to have as many stories as possible. And I think having someone who's been relevant for as long as he's been relevant it's always a good thing to introduce his plays and stories to, kids and teenagers and see how they react to them. I think whether they say this is for me or not, it's more important that they're introduced to these stories. And I think Never Fear Shakespeare does a great job of introducing Shakespeare to children and young adults in a way that is not terrifying, hence the title.
Yeah, as part of the Western canon, there's this Shakespeare's for all, but Shakespeare's not really for all unless the people who make Shakespeare make him for all. It's that circular thing. And so accessibility, seeing yourself, seeing the possibilities, all those things that you're mentioning, it's crucial to keep Shakespeare alive. He's also a living document, and kids should have fun with him. And sometimes the things that exist already can be barriers to entry, and we need more things that are aiming specifically to open the floodgates for kids to enjoy Shakespeare, see him as something that they can enjoy, that they can grasp, that they can let their imagination run wild with. And one final question I have is, how do you make Shakespeare accessible for young audiences?
I would say the work that Shakespeare Anyone is doing is a way to make Shakespeare accessible for young audiences, of breaking down these barriers of bardolatry, as I love that term that you guys use. I think there is a habit in our society to idolize individuals. And I think when we idolize individuals, we lose the most important thing, in that anyone has an opportunity to do anything in the society that we all want. And so for me, it's important that we look at these great stories and someone like Shakespeare as a person, and as a play that he's written, and how can we add to it? How can we bring it into the 21st century? I think putting anything, especially a play, in granite harms society and tells kids that nothing can change. This can't move. This can't shift. And I think William Shakespeare, of all people, would want individuals to just have fun with it and find the ways in which they can connect to great stories. Because at the end, that's what he and his friends liked, are great stories. Everything that idolizes him, to me, is harmful. And so I appreciate what Shakespeare Anyone does. I hope Never Fear Shakespeare accomplishes that. We have the talent in that room to do it. And that's what our goal is to show Shakespeare as the person he was and the people that helped him make theater.
I think definitely come see the play. Yes. In addition, I feel as if we actually honored the text, treated the play as if it were a new play, and performed and directed and programmed the play as it is on the page, it is already accessible. If we really do our work as artists in honoring what Shakespeare was writing, then the most exciting thing is to be that performer on the stage and have children in the audience, have elderly folks in the audience, have working class folks in the audience, have Black people in the audience, have Latinx folks in the audience, have them all, like, the challenge of that is like what we should be aiming for, because accessibility does not come without challenge, that we can invite people into the space and still challenge them to think more. And so that is our challenge as artists putting on this work.
I agree with everything that ML and Sean have said. Something that we talk about on this podcast before is, if Shakespeare is for everybody, then it truly needs to be for everybody. This is another avenue of making it for everybody. Kids can't be what they can't see. And through this avenue, hopefully Never Fear is one avenue where they can see themselves in Shakespeare, just like they, might play pretend and make stories with their friends or put on plays with their friends. Shakespeare was doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's all so inspiring to hear, like, especially because going back to the top of the episode, these audiences, the kids in the audience, like, it is new works to them. They are the groundlings. And so it's really cool to hear about the work that you three are doing, it'll be really exciting to see it being put up on its feet with an audience. And I hope that I'll be able to make it up to Sacramento to see a performance, because the work that the three of you are doing is, I think, a crucial avenue for Shakespeare-adjacent works that will really inspire an audience, a young audience. And so thank you for joining us on the podcast. Well, joining me on the podcast, because Elyse, you're a guest today, to talk about Never Fear Shakespeare. Is there any last thing that you want to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
Hey, Sean, when does it run?
Never Fear Shakespeare runs October 1st through October 26th. If you're a teacher and interested in a field trip or desperately need a field trip because your kids are starting to get a little crazy, come down to the B Street Theater. It really is, it's one of the best field trips in Sacramento. Or if you are just wanting to have a family day out in Midtown Sacramento, we have weekend public performances. You can go to bstreettheater.org to learn more.
Thank you for listening.
Bum, bum, ba, do, do, do.
I'm Courtney Smith.
And I'm Elyse Sharp.
This is Shakespeare, anyone?
Thank you so much for listening to Shakespeare Anyone. Works referenced in this episode are available in the episode description. Our theme music is Never Ending Minute by Sounds Like Sander.
If you would like to support us, visit shakespeareanyone.com/support or check out the links in our episode description. You can also hit the subscribe button, like us, leave a comment, write a review, share us on social media, tell a friend about us, all the things. We'd appreciate it. For more, you can visit our website, shakespeareanyone.com, or follow us on Instagram at ShakespeareAnyonePod.
Now, because you listened all the way to the end of the credits, here is a completely random Shakespeare quote for you.
Hi, I'm ML from Never Fear Shakespeare, and this is from The Life and Death of King Richard II, Act 4, Scene 1, King Richard II. The shadow of my sorrow, let's see. 'Tis very true, my grief lies all within, and these external manners of laments are merely shadows to the unseen grief that swells with silence in the tortured soul.